Okay, so welcome everyone to our monthly free webinar. Today we're joined by Helen Buzduagn. I'm going to let Helen do her own introductions. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Heidi Mavir. I'm the founder of EOTAS Matters. We work supporting parents and carers in neurodivergent households who need to do life differently. And Helen is also one of those parents and carers. I'm going to let her speak. She's going to give you a short presentation, about half an hour, and then we've got some time for some questions. If you registered on this Zoom and you're with us live, you will get a replay. And I will also share links to where you can join Helen and find Helen's other stuff, because she gives away loads of stuff, way too much stuff, I keep telling her. So before she realizes how valuable all of that stuff is, get on our mailing list. So I'm going to hand over to Helen, and if I look distracted, it's just because I'm sharing this in different places. Helen, over to you, my love.
Thank you, Heidi. I am so excited to see so many people here. This is just brilliant. Thank you so much for giving up your precious time on a Monday. And I'm just going to share my screen, so bear with me because it's been a while since I've done this. Hopefully this is all going to work okay. Okay, can everybody see that? I'm just going to try to, when that's disappeared, go to present mode. Can everybody see that? Yeah, is that looking good? Great. Okay, so this is all about getting more flexible work. So I appreciate, and I'd love to know in the chat, and Heidi will be able to monitor this, I won't, but I would love to know where you're at right now. So I'd love to know if you are currently in work, some form of work. Is that working? Does that feel broken? Do you feel like you're hanging on by your fingernails? Or have you taken some time out, either out of choice or because you've had to give up your job? I know that some people I've worked with haven't worked for a very long time, so that might be the situation you're in. And this talk today does cover both of those scenarios, so I'm trying to address both of those. This is what I'm going to cover today. So a little bit about me. I just got one slide about why finding flexible work is so hard, some of the things that people tell me. Um, how to get more flexibility in your current job. I will skate over that fairly quickly, but it's worth thinking about because I always say it's easier to get flexibility in your current job if you have one rather than starting from scratch. But I appreciate not everybody's in that situation.
Let
I
me
will focus a bit
do
more.
you want me to feed back some of the comments that we're getting about where people are right now?
Go on. Yes, I'd love to hear.
So we've got a variation. We've got quite a lot of part-time teachers who are juggling that with family commitments.
Yeah,
We've got people who are on long-term sick because they can't work.
yeah,
We've got a part-time nurse who's desperately trying to keep her job, but her son's out of education, so that's a challenge. We've got people who've given up work as teachers, people who've been out of work for 10 years,
yeah,
6 years out of work,
yeah,
not been able to work since my son was born. A lot of people who gave up work for their caring
yeah,
responsibilities, a lot of people on long-term sick,
yeah,
some people trying to desperately hold on to the jobs that they've got.
yeah,
But yeah, pretty much the people who we thought we would have here, people hanging on by their fingernails. This person's a
yeah,
childminder, needs to stop, but no idea what I can do.
yeah.
So yeah, a really mixed but very
Very
common
mixed.
themes across the.
Yeah. And it's the thing, and I do speak to, mention teachers and nurses. That is a lot of the people that I work with are people in those jobs that are just not flexible. So with the best will in the world, teaching is never going to be something that you can do remotely. And there are loads of jobs that education professionals can do. And it's about that transition as well. So I'm not going to go into loads of detail today because we've got so many different people, different backgrounds on the call. But that's something that I work with people on one-to-one, their particular scenario and what kind of things that you can do. And as for the career break, again, I know a lot of career coaches work with people on a career break and they think of a career break as something like maternity leave or a year or, maybe at most 18 months. But I do work with a lot of people that have had very long career breaks for understandable reasons. And I know that can be really tricky and it can take a lot of time. So, yeah, how to find a new flexible job that works, different approaches. And I am going to be skating over a lot of different things today at kind of high level rather than going into a lot of detail. And just some kind of case studies, ideas, examples of things that have worked for other parents, because I think it's quite good to be able to see that, so you can say, okay, yeah, this is the kind of thing that might work for me in my scenario, and where to get further information and support. So a little bit about me, first of all. So I picked this picture out this morning because it just made me laugh. So first of all, I mean, I am a parent of two neurodivergent children. The younger one there is autistic, just had a diagnosis back in May. He has a PDA profile as well, although that is not officially diagnosed, as some of you with PDA children probably know. Is struggling to attend school at the moment, so I'm really active in the Not Fine in School group, because he's struggling, and I speak to a lot of other parents who are struggling as well. Now, I know that if some of you here, if you already have an EOTAS package, you're probably further down the line in that respect than me. But I do speak to a lot of parents who have already had their EHCP, have EOTAS in place, and are looking for something flexible. Professionally, my background is I've worked as a careers advisor for over 20 years, spanning higher education, working in schools, mainstream, alternative provisions, pupil referral units. I have worked privately with adults. Usually with adults, I usually work online. So I work on Zoom, and I've worked with people all around the world. So from executives over in New York, down to working with just a whole range of people. In the last 6 months, I have, since having my own ADHD diagnosis a couple of years ago, having my son struggling in school an awful lot and fighting the system, I've just started to have a lot more conversations with people that are in the same boat as me, struggling to find flexible work. So as a result of that, I decided to specialise in working with parents and carers in the same position as me. I'd already worked with people like that as part of my private work, and I worked with a lot of young people whose families were struggling. So this just seemed to bring things together for me. And really the demand has kind of exploded. I've had so many conversations with people recently that are in the position where their jobs aren't working or they've been out of work for a very long time. So this is kind of a summary really of what I do and who I help. So I help parents and carers in neurodivergent and SEN households find flexible, family-friendly work when life is complicated. And these are, and I'd love to know again in the chat, which of these resonate with you. So these are the things that parents tell me. People talk about unpredictability a lot. So family life is very unpredictable. Don't necessarily know from one day to the next what's going to happen. So you might have something like, you have a tutor that comes regularly to your house through an agency. That tutor leaves the agency, a new tutor comes. You're not given any warning about the new tutor coming. Your child is really not happy about the new tutor coming, and that provision then breaks down, and you have a big mountain of things to do. So there's lots of reasons why family life can be unpredictable. People feel like you're so stretched, you have no time or energy to look for jobs. Some of the parents I work with have their own disabilities, or they're also neurodivergent. And they have a lot going on at home, and a lot going on kind of fighting the system, advocating for their child. Time and energy for looking for jobs is short. Just not seeing any flexible jobs. The job market in 2025, it isn't easy right now. It is a difficult job market. Not knowing where to look, or going on job sites and feeling overwhelmed because you don't really know what you're looking for. Worrying about scam jobs as well. Lots of kind of commission only jobs. I think there are a lot of those out there, and it's trying to navigate all of that. People losing confidence after a long career break. It does sap your confidence. You can feel confident in terms of your parenting skills, but when it comes to work, if you haven't worked for a long time, certainly some of the clients that I work with really struggle with confidence. CV, just practicalities, CV being really out of date. How on earth, where do you start with that? Worrying about employers not seeing past a career break. Self-employment, it sounds appealing on the one hand, but it feels quite risky as well. So it feels quite insecure, especially I work with a lot of single parent households as well. If you're the only person bringing in an income for your family, then self-employment can just feel a little bit too risky. And some people feeling like I actually need a career change, especially if you are doing something like teaching or nursing, but worried that it's just too late for that and you have to retrain and can you really take that on? So
Lots of people
go on,
relating a
Heidi, tell
lot of
me.
that in the comments.
Yeah,
So people are saying all of this.
all of this.
People saying that the one about self-employment feels particularly pertinent. The
Yeah,
unpredictability, the lack of flexibility in their home life is a big challenge for lots of people.
yes,
Not knowing where to start with a CV,
yeah,
finding something that suits my skill set and my experience.
yes.
Karen says, I think and feel that it's so important to have something for ourselves, but don't know where to start. Although I have changed my career several times in a very difficult place now. So yeah, a lot of people in the comments resonating with what you're saying. I know you'll be able to go back to the comments afterwards, but yeah, bang on the button. All those people. I'm
Brilliant.
so
Yeah.
glad you found your way here, because this is what this workshop is here for. Like, Helen is an expert in supporting parents just like you. So you're in
I
the
am
right.
so glad. And we were just talking, weren't we, about how might need to do some follow-ups because
Yeah.
there's so much here. And I do feel so conscious that I'm really just skating over the
Yeah.
surface. And obviously, when I work with people, I work on whatever the need is, but this is really quite high level.
Yeah.
So apologies if I don't get to a lot of these questions. I'm going to start with, for those of you, and I know it sounded like from what Heidi said, there aren't as many of you that are currently in jobs that could be flexible but aren't. But I will touch on that just in case there are people in there. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on these slides at all. So I'm just moving everybody's image around because I need to see these slides. Okay, so the first thing is, I mean, for people, I see a lot of people in the Not Finding School group are really at sort of crisis point. And I think if you already have an EOTAS package, that probably isn't you. But for people that are still struggling, there's you have a legal right if you're in work for time off to take care of a dependent. It is a legal right for all employees, but it is just for emergencies. And it's surprising the people I speak to that don't know that this exists. And these are things that they have to be unforeseen, which is a little bit tricky. So obviously if you have a child who is struggling in school or struggling to attend a provision that has been agreed, then that's not necessarily, it might be unforeseen the first time, but a week or two in, it's not unforeseen anymore. But there's no set limit on number of days. It tends to be unpaid, but do check your contract on that. It is just a short-term solution. Sort
It's
of kind of
useful to know that, though, if you're in the stage of the journey where the wheels have just magnificently come off and all
Yeah,
of a sudden your child can't go to school anymore,
yeah,
and you're trying to, I mean, usually you'll have had a bit of a, it's rare for that to come completely out of the blue, but even in that
yeah,
case, you might have been managing for a while and then you get to the point where your kid can't go to school anymore. So it's
yeah,
useful to know that you do have legal protection in that situation, because it was
yeah,
unforeseen, and as much as you've been managing as much as you can, and then the wheels come off and then you just have a child at home all the time. So that's useful to know.
exactly. Yeah. And then the main thing really is the formal flexible working request. So April last year, the government really enhanced legal rights on requesting flexible working. You can request flexible working from day one. We're hoping that that's going to change and be enhanced from job offer. I'm really hoping there are people out there campaigning on that at the moment, which would be amazing. But this is how it currently stands. You can make 2 requests a year. Employers do have to consider it. They can only refuse for valid business reasons. I appreciate if you're a teacher, that's very easy to refuse. But there are only, I think, 8 reasons why they can refuse flexible working. Really lots of different options, and I have a free guide which lists these in a bit more detail. But obviously, we know about remote work, we know about part-time. There are other things like job shares you can consider, compressed hours. You can have annualized hours where you have an agreed number of hours over the whole year, and then you agree with your employer how that will look. There's fully flexible hours, which is kind of rare, but does exist, where again you work, you work a set number of hours, and when you work those hours is up to you. And that obviously is kind of ideal. Oops, sorry. So a well-structured request increases your chances of success when it comes to. So I won't go into the detail on that. I will say that Working Families is a really good website. They've got a great video about making flexible working requests. So if you are interested in that, I would check them out as well. So first thing I'm going to say here, I'm going to talk about job sites, where to look for flexible work. However, this is the biggest thing that I find with my clients, is that they come and say they've already been looking for jobs. They've been looking for flexible work for a while by the time they come to me. But when I dig into it a little bit, I find out that they don't necessarily have a really clear idea about what sort of jobs they're looking for. So the kind of thing that I'm talking about is, do you know exactly what your needs are in terms of flexible work? So do you know that, if you need fully remote, do you know exactly what hours you can work? And I know this is really difficult because life is very unpredictable, but if you don't know what you're looking for, then it's hard when you hit the job sites to actually find the right sort of thing. Minimum salary is really important to consider as well. What do you actually need to bring in each month to take care of your family? Are you in a position to do any retraining, reskilling, or do you need to go into something right now with the experience that you currently have? Things like really exploring your strengths, your skills, your values, goals, desired working environment. So things like, if you are neurodivergent yourself, what kind of support needs do you have in that environment? And then you can start to explore what sort of specific roles, sectors, organisations will fit the above things, will fit your needs, will fit your strengths, and so on. And I would strongly suggest considering options beyond your previous career background. So be open-minded here. There are lots of things that you can do. But don't hit the job sites before you do any of that. That kind of pre-work really needs to be done. Advertised jobs. So advertised jobs is only part of the picture. I think a lot of the time we tend to think that, okay, if you're job hunting, it's all about the job sites. But actually this is only part of the picture. And I think from my experience of working with people who've had perhaps a long career break, advertised jobs is not necessarily the most effective approach, because you need to get past that resistance from employers and that kind of, who can't necessarily see past a career break. You need to find family-friendly employers who have that culture and ethos where they'll actually, really appreciate and recognise the amazing skills that you bring as a parent of an SEN child. The negotiation, the resilience, the research skills, all of those high-level skills that you bring. But let's start with this anyway. So we've got flexible job sites. There are a lot of flexible job sites. And in my guide that I'll link to at the end, I've got quite a long list of them. Really good one is Work From Home Hub. They're a really good, they've got a Facebook group, and they list a lot of flexible jobs, mainly focus on remote jobs. There's Flexer, and say there are lots of others as well. There are specialist job sites for particular sectors. So charity job is really good. So lots of jobs in the charity sector tend to offer more flexibility. There tends to be more remote working. Jobs Go Public is another one. There are ones for marketing and whatever sector really that you can think of. Obviously, the big job sites, there's LinkedIn, Indeed. Those are probably the two that I think are really, really good. Company websites as well. So company websites. So if you know, I say or company, it could be an organization, could be a charity, could be public sector, usually advertise jobs on their own site, and they may advertise jobs on their own site that don't exist anywhere else, particularly if they're in a quite a competitive sector where they're trying to reduce the number of applications that they have and get more targeted applications. If you are searching on job sites and you can't find, say, remote jobs or any other kind of flexible working pattern, they can be a bit hidden. So often what you have to do, if you look on, this is Jobs Go Public. This doesn't show up when you go on their homepage, but if you start typing in here in the box at the top, job title, keyword employer, we just type in initial search, then you'll get more filters, and then you can start to drill down and look into the working pattern, and you can look there. You've got obviously things like part-time, flexible hours, and so on. Sometimes, and this is the case with this one, there's no option for remote. And what you then need to do is sometimes you need to stick that in the keyword search as well, and it will bring it up kind of more organically. So it can be a little bit tricky. Alternative approaches. Okay, so I said that, the job sites are not always the only way to look for jobs. Your networks are really important. If I say networking, everyone's like, oh, networking, white middle-aged man in suit. No, I'm not talking about that kind of networking. So it's just really a case of thinking about who you know who might be useful to you in your job search. And it really helps here to have nailed down the kind of jobs you're looking for. So if you've decided, for example, that you're going to look for, I've got an example later on of somebody who works for a SEND charity. So if you've decided that you want, sort of kind of project roles and things like that in a SEND charity, that's really specific. You've nailed that down. You can start to think about who you might know online and offline that could help you. And you might not know anyone directly. This diagram on the left, I got this off LinkedIn when I used to do some training on LinkedIn years and years ago, probably about 20 years ago. And I stole this diagram from LinkedIn, but I think it is quite useful. If you think about you in the middle here, if you just say, had 4 friends, then each of those friends, if you just kind of, put a message out to your network saying, I'm looking for opportunities in a SEND charity. Who do you know that might be able to help me? Chances are you're not going in cold like that. You're probably in a lot of groups already. You might be in WhatsApp groups. You're probably in a lot of Facebook groups. You're probably connected with people on LinkedIn. You probably already know people. But this diagram shows how, anybody can be connected with somebody who might be connected with somebody who could help you. So the more people you reach out to, the more people you tell about what you're looking for, the more likely it is that you will reach somebody who might be able to help. So LinkedIn, I use a lot. I use it kind of, I recommend people use it as a search engine, if you like. So researching people's job titles, look at organizations you think you might want to work for, see who's working for those organizations, what roles they're in. Do those roles look interesting to you? You can get ideas of job titles you could target that way. Reach out to people doing a job that you'd be interested in, reach out to the line managers of the people who are doing the job you might be interested in, reach out to HR people. You can just send connection requests to people without putting a personalized message. A lot of people are just happy on LinkedIn to connect. Facebook is obviously different, but on LinkedIn, people are happy to connect. Not everybody, but a lot of people will. If you go on job sites and you see an organisation you're interested in, and you think, actually, I'd really like to work for, say the British Red Cross, I have a strong interest in that charity. I've raised some funds for that charity before. I've volunteered, you know, so maybe there's an organisation that you have an affinity with. Are they advertising a different job? So you can see there, get an idea of which organisations you could target, who the hiring managers are. You can maybe then go back to LinkedIn. That's right, I've got a name of a hiring manager. Connect with that person on LinkedIn. You can send then maybe a speculative message on LinkedIn saying, you know, I'm interested in these types of roles. Have you got anything coming up? So just think about alternative approaches. Okay, so a couple of success stories. Oh, excuse me. So this is somebody I picked. Lisa is not her real name, and that is not her real picture. So Lisa wants to remain anonymous, but I picked her because I think she is a really good example for this group, because she has somebody who has taken time out. She has now got an EOTAS package, but this is a sort of story which is something that I hear a lot as well. So Lisa was a teacher. So perfect example based on what people are saying here. And she was really struggling. She's probably where I am now in terms of my son. But obviously in a teaching job, she got to the point where she just couldn't do that job anymore, and to make the really difficult decision to quit teaching. Because she was battling the SEN system, she just couldn't focus on working after that. So she took some time out, didn't really know how long that was going to be, and just focused on trying to battle with the EHCP and get all of that sorted out. And she needed to get therapy for her daughter, and eventually got the EHCP and finally got an EOTAS package in place. She got to the point where she was able to start thinking about work again, but she knew there was no way she could go back into teaching, and she needed something that allowed her to work a lot more flexibly around her daughter's education, different therapies, meetings, and so on. So she started using social media, ended up, because she was really active on Facebook, she managed to find a job because she was connected to a charity, a SEND charity, as a user. She was on the charity's mailing list, but then additionally, a friend on Facebook sent her a message saying, you know, I've seen this job. It sounds like it could be right up your street. It's an educational charity. They're looking for somebody from a teaching background. And so she applied for the job, and she talks about how in her application that this charity had been really helpful to her and her daughter. And she interviewed for the job and she got the job, and she's working 20 hours a week, fully remote. The charity really valued her lived experience. And obviously the fact that she'd engaged with that charity herself was really, really helpful as well. But they are able to offer some flex when life is unpredictable. So finding that family-friendly employer, I think, is really, really important. Just due to lack of time, because I want to make sure that we have enough time for questions, because I bet there are loads and loads of questions. So just a few other examples here, and I just pulled some of these out quickly. One thing to mention really is I often talk to people about separating out the short term versus the long term if you are in crisis right now. So some people, and I think particularly if you are the sole breadwinner in your household, if you're hanging on to your job by your fingernails, if you're looking for flexible work and need something right now, you might have to take something which is not your career job, it's not your ideal job. And I talk about separating short term and long term. You can just get something, and it's not going to pigeonhole you. It's not going to stick on your CV and prevent you from going back to your old career, or prevent you from getting something that really reflects your skills and experience further down the line. I know that's something that a lot of people worry about. So the first example I've got is somebody that found a job in remote customer service, and she decided that she would do that for a year or 2 years until she was in a position to do something else. Um, there's the next one is somebody actually had a background in IT already, but actually did some extra qualifications, so Microsoft certifications, and as a result of that is now doing bits of contract IT work online. The next person, Jenny, she retrained as a play therapist. She's now self-employed. She is finding it a little bit more tricky. So a lot of the play therapy that she does, it has to be face to face, it has to fit around. So she's juggling a little bit to try and get that to fit around when her child is in a provision and she can go and do that, but she does have family support. So sometimes there are face-to-face things that you can do. It doesn't have to all be fully remote, but you have to really think about your situation and how much you can devote to in-person work. The next one's working as a virtual assistant. So this is really popular as well. I know Heidi has virtual assistants, don't you, Heidi?
I do.
So
They run my whole life for me.
yes. So if you are good at administration and if you have an administrative background, and even if you don't, this can be a really good option. Often it is, self-employed, but you might have a couple of businesses that you work for, where you might work, 5, 10 hours a week, something like that. That's like a regular income for you. And then last one, Mohammed, again, teaching background, is now an online tutor for home ed and the EOTAS students, works for an agency. There are lots of agencies out there and also independently. There are a lot more, but I just wanted to give you an example there, a few examples there that you can look at.
Amazing. There's loads in the chat. I've kind of picked through
Brilliant.
some things for you. Well, there's a couple of things
Yeah.
that I kind of want to clarify for people as well with regards to their relationship to EOTAS and stuff. One
Yeah.
question
Yeah.
that come up in a couple of people, like, I'd really like to know this, and I think this is very much, it depends case by case, and this is why being supported by someone like Helen and making sure that you're on Helen's mailing list, please join her mailing list. It's the value in there is incredible. So it will be different for everybody, but May asks, can we really work whilst managing an EOTAS package? Do people achieve this? And if so, what work is practical? And I know you've given some examples, but what I did want to say, I'll let you answer it in a minute, but I did want to say, because a couple of people in there saying, yeah, I've got to supervise provision. I just want to remind you, people, in case you don't know this, legally, in line with SEN Code of Practice and SEN regulations, parents are not responsible and cannot be held responsible for delivering any part of a child's provision in the EHCP. That includes EOTAS arrangements. So if you are being told by your local authority that you have to supervise, that's unlawful. If your child needs supervision in order for them to access their provision, that's a special educational need, and that should be funded through your package. So we have more on this in the Marble Run, which is our monthly online subscription. Come and join us. Something we dig into a lot, and it's something that a lot of local authorities try to pin on parents in terms of parental responsibility, because it's a special educational need that your child needs to be supervised. It's not parental responsibility. It is possible to have someone in your home supervising provision for your child whilst you are working in another room, and it should be made possible by your arrangement. Sorry, Helen, I'll let you answer that, because I know that it's
No, it's right. I think it is possible and people do it. And there are a lot of people in Heidi's group that do work and make it work. What I will say is, though, you have to really assess whether this is right for you right now. You really do. And I have had people come to me, and we've had a chat, because I always have, if I work with somebody one-to-one, I'll always have a chat first and just see where they're at and see whether I can actually help them. There are people that come to me and we kind of think, actually, now is not the right time. Now is not the right time. So I will say that first, now may not be the right time. However, yes, it can work. And you really need to think about going back to those needs and non-negotiables is okay, you know, there might be elements of the package where you think, I do need to kind of supervise that at the moment. So perhaps you've got a new tutoring arrangement, and you know that you need to be there initially while that is established. And I know that's been the case. One of my clients at the moment actually is going through that. She's got something new and she knows that she can't step away and work from that at the moment. But she thinks perhaps in, you know, a couple of months, she might be able to do a little bit more. So what I'm working with her on the moment, sorry, my brain is still in Monday,
Right.
Monday morning mode. I'm like tripping over my words. We're going through the exploration at the moment, trying to figure out what she wants to do, what her needs and non-negotiables are, you know, what she can do with her skills at the moment. Often it's a case of fully remote, but you can decide whether it really needs to be fully remote. Fully remote can often work best, but I know that some people have a child going to a provision where they're really well established in that provision. And then you know, they may be able to say, all right, this is a chunk of time where I can actually work. I can go somewhere to work. You can also look at contract work as well. So if you think, all right, well, I've got this package in place for this year, but then that might change, my package might change. Then you can look at, you know, recruitment agencies I've not mentioned as well, but sometimes contract work with recruitment agency can be a good option there. But in terms of fully remote work, there are lots of different options. I haven't got time to go into loads today. I would recommend, I know I said don't go to the job sites, but if you are interested in what's available, you can have a look on sites like the Work From Home Hub, like Flexa. Do download my guide, Finding Flexible Work in the UK, because I list all the flexible working sites in there as well. So I'd really recommend you download that. The other thing is, I haven't really talked about employment versus self-employment. I don't know if anybody's asked about that. But if you download that guide, in my follow-up emails, I've got emails about exploring the hidden job market, about self-employment versus employment, and also about avoiding scam jobs, which I touched on today, but not really had a chance to go into in any detail. And if you've had a career break, and you are worried about your CV, I know a few people have said that they're worried about their CV. I've got a free guide on that, a post-career break CV guide. So get a copy of that as well. It talks about how to talk about your skills as a parent and as somebody who's battled with the SEND system, you know, to really uncover that and how to convey that on your CV effectively.
Yeah. One thing I want to say, I'm going to go through some questions and
Yeah,
I'll
please.
chip in a bit and I'll ask you to add to them.
Yeah.
People are, one thing that for me, so I've worked in SEND field for 5 years. Before this, I had a little bit of classroom and teaching experience, but I didn't really know my way around the SEND system. I'm really passionate about the fact that we have a really well skilled, knowledgeable army of parents and carers who have been through the system and are desperate within the field for quality advocates, SEND peer-to-peer support professionals.
Yeah.
And some of the best advocates I know are people who have that lived experience. So it might be completely different from anything you've done before,
Yeah.
but that is absolutely something worth considering. Someone's asked about what about a career change going towards SEND. I've done lots of courses for
Okay.
actual qualifications, basic low-level experience, but no actual provable skills. IPSI have their SEND law qualifications. There's 3 levels. If
Yeah.
you go up to level 3, you will be more qualified than most SEND caseworkers in local authorities. And within the field and within the parent community, those qualifications are really well thought of. You can do it as a parent. It's a lower cost level investment than if you do it as a professional. And I always recommend that to people who want to kind of like upskill themselves and learn more. And you'll see over the coming months that you'll hear me talking a lot more about, as EOTAS Matters, as a entity, we're really keen to bring new people into the field of advocacy because there's such a wealth of experience. So watch this space for that. Um,
That is so good. That, yeah, absolutely. And funny, yeah, so there's a client that I'm working with at the moment. Obviously, I can't give specific details, but this is a conversation that we're having at the moment. And the client has a child with a particular disability, and she is connected with a specialised charity with that disability. And that charity offers its own training. So as well as the IPSIA training, a lot of these charities will offer very specific training in that special educational need or disability. And you can really be a specialist in
yeah,
that particular disability because you've got your own lived experience and then you have a qualification on top of that, and you're really well positioned then,
yeah.
to whether it's a kind of, a self-employed advocate or working for an established send charity. So there's that kind of self-employed route, setting yourself up as an advocate, a consultant, a trainer, a speaker. But also, you can assist somebody. So somebody else who's already trodden that path, perhaps is a few years ahead, somebody like Heidi. And there are lots, if you go on LinkedIn, certainly if you connect with me on LinkedIn, please connect with me. I'm connected as well to a lot of send charities, advocates, specialists.
The people
Um,
that I've got in my network who have become advocates and I now send people to, a lot of them are parent professionals, and they're people who have come across my, like you. I've
yeah,
come across them and I've been like, flipping heck, Helen really knows what she's talking about. So I send people to Helen. You know what I mean? So like I don't pretend to know everything, and there are just not enough people in our field. And for me personally, and I know that professional traditional employers don't feel this way, but in the field, I think generally speaking across the board, parents understand the value of expert by experience.
yeah,
For me, when I was early in my journey, it was the parents who had literally walked that path. I didn't care what qualifications they had. I cared that they'd got an EOTAS package and they could show me
yeah,
how they got it. So that, don't play that down to yourself. Don't do yourself out of thinking about those things just because you don't have a piece of paper that says you knew how to prove that you knew this stuff, because I think expert by experience is far more valuable, particularly in this field.
absolutely.
Karen says, do you have an example that we could post or say on LinkedIn? How much of what would you, how much would you say about what situation you're in? Like,
Mm,
maybe that's something, I don't know whether you have a tool for that currently, or whether you talk about that in your emails, or, because I know you use
yeah.
LinkedIn a lot, don't you?
That is interesting. Yeah, I do. I do have templates that people can use, and I think it very much, but it tends to be tailored. So I tailor it to, it depends who you're talking to.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're talking to a send parent professional that we've just been talking about, you might really want to talk about your own lived experience, because that will really resonate with the person you're talking to. If you're talking to some random employer, an HR person in an organization, you might not want to talk about that so much. There might be other things that are more relevant. So it just needs to be tailored to the individual you're talking about. Research the person, research the profile, look at their background, their experience as well. So I
Yeah.
don't know, Heidi, was that in relation to the conversation we've just been having or just in general?
No, it was just a general question about
Mm.
LinkedIn. How you, one of the things I need to pick your brains about is LinkedIn, because I'm not on LinkedIn. Yeah,
LinkedIn is an amazing career research tool.
yeah.
It's absolutely incredible, and it's fantastic for send as well. And there's so many. And I've told Heidi off before about this. I've told Heidi she needs to get on LinkedIn and use it more.
I do need
Um,
to get on LinkedIn, but I can't currently serve everybody that have found me, so I'm a little bit
yeah,
reluctant. But it's
yeah. And look, and I get it because I know. So I used to be really active on LinkedIn when I worked in universities.
Mhm.
And I used to train people on LinkedIn. And then I had to take voluntary redundancy during lockdown, when my son was really, really struggling in school. I discovered I was in perimenopause, didn't know I had ADHD. I went through my own sort of almost breakdown, took voluntary redundancy, and I completely came off anything like that. So, you know, all of those kind of professional networks, I remove myself from. And if that's where you are now, I completely get it. And I've worked with clients. I'm working with one right now who's saying, I just don't want to go on LinkedIn. I'm really scared of it. And I would hope that, you know, over time you can get past that. I had to get myself past that
Got to
because
be
it is
ready, right? It's got to be
incredibly
right
difficult.
for you.
Pardon?
Got to be right for you.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Elena, apologies if I've mispronounced your name, or Ilana, nice name. I just don't know how to pronounce it. I apologize. What is the law regarding pay levels and an employer providing flexibility, part remote, etc., etc.? Can they agree a lower wage for this support?
No, there's a minimum wage, national minimum wage, regardless of your working pattern.
So if you go to an employer and say, I want flexible working, they can't say, that's fine, but your hourly rate will go down or your salary will go down. They're not allowed to do that.
No.
Okay. But people saying, someone saying that they trained as a personal trainer, retrained because it was something that they were passionate about, which I love. People saying they feel stuck, they're in burnout, and please no, we get that. God, do we get that?
Totally get that.
This is a question from Jill, and I think this is something that maybe we can briefly touch on in terms of pointing them to access to work. Can I get a funded virtual assistant to help me work? I am neurodivergent. So maybe we need a sessional access to work, actually, Helen.
I'm not a specialist in access to work, Heidi.
Okay, maybe we need to find someone who's a specialist on access to work, Helen.
Yeah. Maddie Alexander Grau is good.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, she'll be a good person.
Because as a disabled adult, and newsflash, neurodivergence is a disability, and disability is not a dirty word. I will die on this hill. You are entitled to access to work assessment, which looks at the needs that you have, much like an EHCP does for our children or young people, but for adults in employment, and makes accommodations so that you can access being able to work. So that's something to look into, and we will put it on our longer list of things to maybe look at.
I can talk about it, but I'm probably not, you know, the best person to talk about it. But it's for whether you're employed or self-employed. It's something that you can apply for.
People don't realize
It has got stricter and less generous. It's got tougher to get, like so many things in terms of benefits. But it's still worth making an application. Ask ChatGPT to help you as well.
AI is your friend.
Yes.
Yeah. If you haven't accessed my AI training, please do go and have a look at that. I'm very proud of it. Karen says there is huge potential for businesses to reap our knowledge, past and current. There is space in the market. Yes. Elena says, I'd like to do that, but it's scary to leave leave what I know, and current school supports that 100% understand that. Like career changes are very different. Difficult. I'd love to be an advocate and believe I have the skills, but I really struggle with the idea of charging families in crisis. How do you manage that difficulty? Okay.
That's one for you, Heidi, I think.
Strap in. I've got strong thoughts. We work in a sector that is heavily subsidised through charity. So IPSI, amazing work, and they are a charity, and their work is funded to be free at point of access. But because of that, people expect that all work within this field should be free at point of access. The fact is that people who work at IPSI get paid. They just don't get paid by the end users. And I had to do a lot of work on this. So for me as an advocate, I do a lot of free work. You're on a free webinar. And I have a lot of low cost pieces. So Helen is the same. So I have a monthly Marble Run membership. It's only £27 a month. There's over 80 hours of training in there, resources, templates, the whole kit and caboodle. That allows me to feel comfortable with charging people more for one-on-one time and access to my personal expertise. I really think we have to do a lot of work to move away from this idea that those of us who are SEND parents, and let's not forget, a lot of us are neurodivergent ourselves, it's not okay to ask disabled adults to work for free. It's not okay. So part of our work within this field as parents and advocates and, you know, disability activists is to start putting our foot down and saying, no, we will not create an economy that is based entirely on burnt out parents burning themselves out further in order to support other burnt out parents. We have to put a line in the sand and say people's expertise, knowledge, experience, and time is precious and should be paid for. So yeah, I could bang on about that all day. and I probably will later on a live today. But there is nothing wrong with being paid for your time. And families in crisis, which is like, I know that's very emotive language, but families in crisis are the families who need you most, and they are the most labor intensive people to work with. So it's okay for you to get paid. It's right and proper for you to get paid. And having been one of those families in crisis, I used a lot of free services. I tapped into a lot of expertise. And when I needed it, I paid for things because it was my priority. So my advice is, if you're in that position, get out of other people's purses. That's none of your business. Decide what your offer is going to be. Decide what your price points for those offers are going to be. Make sure you're giving good value in terms of free content wherever you can. And just remember that you are a disabled adult and it's okay for you to work and to be paid for your work. The end. Do you want to add to that, Helen?
Nothing to add to that.
Okay. People asking for your free guides. I'll post them again. Shakti's saying, sorry, yeah, Shakti's saying it's a 24-week wait to be assessed for access to work currently within her field. Genius Within have over 10 years experience supporting neurodivergent people with access to work. Can you talk, we're going to do this, aren't we? I think we are probably going to do this separately, but can you talk a little bit about self-employment and like, have you got anything in your resources and your tools that people can access that begins them thinking about? Because if you've always had a proper job, moving into self-employment can be a bit terrifying, right?
Yeah. When I speak to people, when we're at that kind of exploring option stage, it comes from that, what are your needs, what are your non-negotiables at the start. So if you do need a regular, stable income immediately, then obviously that might be something to look at further down the line. So first figure out if it's something you're in a position to look at right now, or if it's something you need to look at further down the line. If you are in a position to look at it right now, and often it's something that you can get going along the side of something else as well, so you can do two things concurrently. I like to kind of work in those parallel tracks, the short term, but also the long term, keeping something on the on the back burner, if you like.
Yeah.
So yeah, different things that you can do. So this kind of having an online business is something that a lot of people do. So you can look at, obviously we've talked about the send expertise, but you can also look at your CV and your experience and think about what kind of things you could do with that. So people from a teaching background can go into things like, online tutoring, training, if you have a background in the NHS, there are lots of different things that you can do there online as well. So I know somebody now who's retraining at the moment to be a life coach. But she started building up her online business during the time that she was training, didn't wait until she'd finished her training before she got going with that as well. So I know lots of people coming from a health background set up online businesses in some kind of coaching or in the wellness sector. You can also do something with products. It doesn't just have to be a service-based business. So, selling things on Etsy, on eBay, on Amazon. There's a whole load of people doing books as well. So you can write books and sell those again on Amazon. Self-publishing is so much easier. I think what's great is everything is so much easier now. The problem with that, of course, is that there's so much more competition as well. So, but I would definitely always start with self-employment, and especially if you've been struggling for a really long time and you have limited energy, limited time, you've got to be really, really excited about it. That's the very first thing. I feel really passionate about what I do. And if you don't have that, you're not going to do it because your time and energy is really limited. So start with that. Think about what it is that you could get really excited about. if you have no idea how to go about doing it, use AI to help you. Ask questions, put it into ChatGPT, say, well, I've got this idea, what could I do with this? And get into a conversation with it. It can
Yeah.
really help. Go on Heidi's workshop to help with that as well.
Come on my workshops. Keep your eyes peeled. Helen and I met, well, we met a while ago, but I've supported Helen through a program to learn about setting up an online business. That's why we work so closely together. Lisa Johnson's one-to-many program I'm an affiliate for last year. I'm affiliate for again this year. If you are someone who's like, I don't know what I'm doing, but I know I want to work for myself, that's a really good place to start. You'll see that rolling out in the coming weeks. I think cart opens at the end of February. So if you're on my mailing list, you'll see stuff coming through about that. If it's not for you, you can opt out. We have a soft opt out on all our emails. So you can go, this is not for me. Stop sending me this stuff. But keep your eyes peeled on my socials for that, because one of the things that I think is really important when you're thinking about self-employment is from the beginning, it's working out how you're going to work. I very rarely leave my house for work. And I have a business that turns over upwards of £100,000 a year. That includes all my different revenue streams. I have a book, I have lots of different things. And I want to clarify, I do not get paid £100,000 a year. That's what my business turns over before people go, oh my God, look at how much money she's making. But it's really important to do that from the very beginning, like to set your stall out. And the other thing I wanted to say was, for many years, for 15 years, I used government support to enable me to work. So I had universal credit. I was on income support for a while. I was on job seekers allowance for a while. When I wasn't able to work, I didn't work. And I'm not saying it was easy. It wasn't. But don't be afraid to look at what your options are in terms of benefits, because universal credit is there for a reason. You have paid tax, almost certainly enough to be able to qualify for universal credit. As a parent with carer responsibilities, often the minimum income floor is removed, so you can get your full benefit allowance without having to have a cut in that, because you're expected to work a certain amount of hours a week or earn a certain amount per week. So do look into that, and maybe we'll think about a webinar on that as well.
Yeah, the benefit side of it is really important. I'm glad you brought that up, Heidi, as well, because often I think people are worried that if they then start working, they're going to suddenly lose all their benefits. And it's really important to kind of know exactly what the situation is with that.
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to post again the free guide links. Give me 1 second so that you've got them all.
Have you got those? Yeah, so you've got.
So I've posted a link for Helen's weekly newsletter, and her Finding Flexible Work Guide, and her Post-Career Break CV Guide. Please just go and sign up for the weekly newsletter. What you will learn is worth its weight in gold. There will be a copy of this recording out to you. If you're a Marble Run member, it will be permanently in the Marble Run. If you're not a Marble Run member, you'll get a link so you can access the replay anyway. And if you're not a Marble Run member, why aren't you a Marble Run member? What are you thinking? It's our monthly membership for parents and carers in neurodivergent households, £27 a month. Please do go and take a look at HeidiMavir.com. Thanks for being with us, everyone. Thank you, Helen, for today. We've run to an hour, so we're going to call it a day, because I don't know about you, but my brain turns off after an hour. Literally, it's like turning into a pumpkin at midnight. But please know we've got your back. Please come and find Helen. What she doesn't know is not worth knowing. And I want to thank you, Helen, for giving your time so freely today. And we really, really appreciate it. And
thank you so much, everyone, for coming, and thank you, Heidi, for having me.
Of course. Thanks, everyone. We'll see you all again soon. Take care. I'm going to stop the recording.